Hello, Monica here with Jim Butcher's Full Moon, Book 2 of the Dresden Files. We are on Chapter 24. Sorry about that. It couldn't possibly get any worse than this, I thought. I cowered in the corner, clutching my captured wrench like a child's teddy bear, with no way out and full of the knowledge that my magic had failed me. Oddly, that thought troubled me more than probable death. A lot more. Death was something that happened to everyone. Only the timing is different for each of us. I knew that I would eventually die. Hell, I even knew that I might die horribly. But I had never thought that the magic would fail me. More accurately, I had never guessed that I might fail it. I had pushed too hard, and my body wouldn't conduct the power I needed to utilize the forces I was accustomed to commanding. Granted, maybe I should have started with something smaller than a large and violent telekinesis, but the indication was there that I had burned out some internal circuitry. It might not ever come back. It was a loss of identity. I was a wizard. It was more than just a job. More than just a title. Wizardry was at the core of my being. It was my relationship with my magic, the way I used it, the things it let me do that defined me, shaped me, gave me purpose. I dwelled on these things while death danced over the concrete floor, clutching them like a sailor clinging to the wreckage of a ship, trying to ignore the storm that blasted it to pieces. I noted peripheral details from my pathetic hiding place. Morcone made a break for one of the garage doors, only to be pinned down behind a rusted truck by gunfire from some of the street wolves. Hendricks joined him, and a moment later the truck roared to life and crashed out through the garage door and into the gravel parking lot. Hendricks, in the rear of the truck, fired several blasts from the big shotgun back into the building, while the street wolves sent rounds skewing off after the truck. The real battle, though, took place between the street wolves and the FBI. It was largely a gunfight. Denton was armed with his FBI-issued automatic and what looked like a Uzi submachine gun. He cut down 3 of the lycanthropes with a swath of fire from the automatic weapon as he came in through the door, and the 2 great wolves with him hurtled into the darkness. Screams and savage snarling erupted from the shadows, and I could hear more of the lycanthropes dying, being torn apart by the enormous wolves that had once been Agents Ben and Wilson. Parker screamed orders somewhere in the dark, half incoherent with rage. Denton reached into his jacket for a fresh clip for the Uzi, and I saw something across his belly that I noted for future reference. Should I have any future? I watched the killing, and I hid, and I prayed that there would be an opportunity to flee toward the open doors of the garage before Denton or Parker noticed me. It went on forever. Oh, I knew, in some rational part of my brain, that only seconds were going by, but it felt like days. I was terrified, and my head and my body hurt, and I couldn't use magic to protect myself. There was a sound near my ankle, and my heart leapt up out of my throat. I flinched violently away from it. The sound repeated itself in a continuous scrabble of noise. The floor, I noticed, was rough dirt and broken concrete in this corner, where the foundation platform was flawed. The scrabbling noise came from the very base of the wall, where the dirt was stirring and moving. Something was trying to dig its way beneath the wall and into the garage, practically right underneath my butt. I felt a chill of fear, followed swiftly by anger at the thing that added to an already overabundant flow of adrenaline. I clutched my makeshift weapon in hand and moved to crouch over the source of the disturbance, lifting it in preparation to strike at whatever came through. I saw it in the dimness, and there was no mistaking the shape. A paw, a huge canine paw, scrabbled at the earth, digging out a shallow hole beneath the wall. Frustrated by bits of concrete that got in the way, Between shots, I could hear animal sounds outside. Panting whimpers of eagerness, it seemed. Whatever was out there wanted to dig its way inside, and wanted it bad. "Dig this," I muttered, and swung the wrench down on the paw. Hard. There was an instant yelp of pain, and the paw jerked its way back out from beneath the corrugated metal wall. It was followed by a snarl, and the paw appeared again. Whereupon I slammed the wrench down on it once more, with similar results. I heard a furious snarling sound from the other side, and I released a small surge of vindictive satisfaction by leaning down close enough to the hole to say, bring another one in here, and I'll give you the same." I heard sounds outside for a moment, then a crunch of gravel, and Tura West's smooth, unmistakable voice. "Wizard," she hissed, "stop that!" I blinked, startled, and leaned down close to the hole. "Tara? Is that you? How did you know it was me?" "You're the only man I ever met," Tara growled, "who would smash the paws that are trying to free you from certain death." I flinched at another burst of gunfire from the far side of the garage. "I'm going to tell them to dig again. Do not strike at their paws." "Them?" I demanded. "Them who?" But she didn't answer me. Instead, the scrabbling sounds began again. I looked over my shoulder at the rest of the room. I saw street wolves moving swiftly out through the door and the gaping hole Marcone had left in the garage door when he escaped. In a flash of automatic muzzle flare, I saw Denton standing over the form of a lanking woman and firing down into it, apparently making absolutely certain that she would never rise again. I had enough time to recognize Lana's face, now screwed up with pain rather than bloodlust. Her body jerked and twitched as Denton emptied the remainder of the clip into her, and then everything went dark again. By my feet, the scrabbling sounds continued, and then broke off in a yelp. I heard a series of vicious snarls and yelps from the half-dug hole beneath the wall, and I cursed. "Tara," I whispered as loudly as I dared, "what's going on?" There was only more growling for answer, and a sharp yelp that carried to the far side of the garage. I threw myself flat behind the toolbox and a pile of junk, just before a flashlight beam swept over the corner where I had been hiding. "It's that bitch," Denton snarled. "Rogers got her outside." There was a whispering sound, and then a tingling feeling along my spine. Then a throaty, sensual female voice purred. "Parker's still in here. So is that wizard. I can smell them." "Damn it," Denton growled. "The wizard knows too much. Wilson, go help Roger." "What about me, lover?" the female voice said, a husky laugh added to the end. Agent Ben sounded like she'd just had too much sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and was hungry for more. "You and I stay in here. I'll cover the doors. Flush them toward me." There was a mewling sound of pleasure from the woman. "Come with me," she urged. "Change. You know you love it so much. You know how good it feels." I could visualize Denton's veins throbbing. Smarter for one of us to cover the door with a gun. But there was sort of a heavy reluctance to his tone. "Fuck smart," Ben purred. "Come with me. Change. It's not why we did this. Not why we made the bargain." Ben made another sound, utterly sexual in nature. "It doesn't matter now. Taste it," she urged him. "Taste the blood." The light wavered and dropped from the corner where I hid. I chanced to look up. Agent Ben, spattered in gore, stood before Denton in the wash of his flashlight from the floor. She had 3 of her fingers pressed together and was sliding them between his lips. Denton was shaking, and his eyes were squeezed tightly closed. He suckled at her fingers, something frighteningly erotic in the motion. One of the huge, gaunt beasts from earlier, Wilson, I supposed, stood nearby, watching the pair of them with gleaming eyes. Denton made a growling sound and grasped Ben by her mane of graying hair. jerking her chin up so that he could nuzzle and lick at the blood smeared over her throat. She laughed and arched into him, her hips undulating against him in urgent motions. "Change," she moaned. "Change. Do it." There was a howl of rage, a flash of motion, and Parker staggered from the darkness, one arm dangling uselessly, a heavy knife in his other hand, and defiance and insane anger in his glazed eyes. Denton and Ben looked up, and then they reached to their wrists, flickered, and changed into a pair of the nightmare-sized wolves, their eyes glowing in the ambient light, jaws dropping open to reveal lolling tongues and vicious fangs. Parker lurched forward, greasy hair flying, and the three wolves leapt on him. I stared in a sort of sickened fascination. The wolves buried him under a mound of fangs and fur and blood in absolute fury. He screamed, the knife flailing, and then it was cast aside out of his hands to land spinning on the floor not far from me. Parker tried to fight, tried to struggle up and kick, but it was hopeless. There were flashes of blood, and he screamed again and went still. And then the wolves started to eat him. They bit off chunks of muscle and gulped them down, ripping aside clothing to get to more meat. They snarled and snapped at one another, and one of the males mounted the female, even as she continued to tear at the body, burrowing her muzzle down through the layers of stomach muscle to get at the vitals. My gorge rose, and if I had anything in my stomach, I would have emptied it onto the concrete floor. Instead, I turned back to the half-finished hole in the floor and started digging at it with my wrench, frantic. I didn't want to be the next thing on the menu. There were more yelps from outside, more growls, and I opened the hole up enough that I thought I might be able to get out. I flattened myself down and wormed my way into the dirt, the corrugated metal scraping at my back, the wounded shoulder paining me again. I jerked my way out into the open air, to find myself in an alley behind the garage, dimly lit by a distant street light. There were wolves everywhere. 3 wolves, smaller than the ones I had seen before, were spread in a loose ring around a great russet-furred beast with bat-like ears. The great wolf's coat was spattered with blood, and 2 of the smaller wolves lay nearby, yelping in pain, stirring weakly, blood matting their coats. Tara was a part of the ring around the great beast as well, naked and lean, a length of pipe held in either hand. When the great wolf turned toward one of the others, the rest would begin to close in around him, and he would spin, jaws flashing, trying to bend down one of those who encircled him. "You took your time, wizard," Tara snarled without looking back at me. I got to my feet, wrench in hand, and shook my head to clear it of cold sweat. "Tara," I said, "we've got to get out of here. Danton and the others will be coming." "Go," she responded. "Help McFinn. We will hold them." The great russet wolf lunged at her, and she skittered back, coolly staying a hair's breadth from his fangs. She fetched him with a sharp blow across the nose, with more speed than I could have believed, and a contemptuous snort. The 3 smaller wolves rushed the great beast, and he spun to drive them back and away from him, drawing a yelp from one that wasn't swift enough to entirely evade his jaws. "You can't stop them all," I said. "There's 3 more like this one." "They are a pack on the ground," she snarled, and jerked her head toward the wounded wolves. "We do not abandon our own." I let out an acid curse. I needed Tara. She could confirm everything, help me sort out all my facts, make sure that I understood what was going on. She was offering to give her life for me, to stay and occupy Denton and the others for as long as she and her companions could, but I had seen enough people dying already tonight. I wasn't going to accept another loss on my behalf. And I was abruptly more furious than afraid. I'd been run around and treated like a piece of baggage or a choice item on the menu for long enough. I'd flailed around in the dark and been helpless and ineffective for way too long. Too many people had been hurt, too much suffering caused by creatures of magic in the night, things that I should have been handling. It didn't matter to me at that moment that I couldn't work any of my spells against them. I might not have any magic available to me, but that didn't make me any less of a wizard. One of the Magi, the wise. That's the true power of a wizard. I know things. Knowledge is power. With power comes responsibility. That made the entire thing pretty simple. I clutched the wrench in my hand, took a deep breath, and threw myself forward at the great wolf's back. The huge wolf sensed me coming, spun with abrupt speed, and met me in the air. It slammed me down to the concrete and bent its jaws toward my throat. I heard Terror cry out, and she had the other wolves move forward. But they would never have been able to get to the thing before it killed me. That wasn't the point. I jammed the wrench into the wolf's jaws, feeling some teeth tear at one of my fingers as I did. The wolf snarled and jerked the wrench out of my hands. It spun end over end toward me, and the great beast turned back toward me, its eyes glowing. I had time to watch it all in great detail. The wolf's power, its speed, simply shocked me. It was huge, quick, and I didn't have a prayer against it. The distant street light gleamed off of its reddened fangs as its muzzle sped toward my throat. Thank you for listening. That's the end of chapter 24. If you like it, please like and subscribe.